Steelers' George Pickens ends game in a fight, rips the Browns after loss. It was a night full of emotions for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who found themselves on the wrong end of a 24-19 loss to the Cleveland Browns. While the Steelers played a tough game, they couldn't quite get the win, and George Pickens wasn't prepared to just walk off the field quietly. As the game clock expired, the fireworks were just beginning. On the final play of the game, a Hail Mary attempt from the Steelers. Pickens was covered by Browns cornerback Greg Newsome too. As the pass was batted down and the game officially ended, Pickens wasn't ready to stop. With the ball still in the air, Pickens got into a bit of a tangle with Newsome. The two were fighting for position, and as the ball hit the ground, Pickens wrapped his arm around Newsome's helmet and yanked him back. This quickly escalated into a full-on physical altercation as both players began exchanging shoves and punches just outside the back of the end zone, with stadium staff and officials rushing in to separate them. Amazon Prime Video cameras caught the chaotic moment, showing Pickens being restrained as he was visibly frustrated. The game had ended, but for Pickens, it felt like the fight had only just begun. Meanwhile, the rest of the players were exchanging handshakes at midfield victory. Pickens took the opportunity to air his frustration. The conditions played a huge part in today's game, Pickens said, referring to the snowy weather that affected both teams' performances. I don't really think the Cleveland Browns are a good team at all. I think the conditions kinda saved them today. While it's true that the weather conditions in Cleveland were tough, snow, wind, and low temperatures definitely made for a challenging game, Pickens' remarks came off as sour grapes. The Browns, sitting at a 3-8 record, aren't necessarily a championship contender, but today was a bad night for the Steelers. And sometimes, it's just not your day. Pickens, however, seemed to be having trouble letting that reality sink in. Newsome fires back, fake tough guy. And as if Pickens' post-game comments weren't enough, Browns cornerback Greg Newsome wasn't going to let him get away with it. On social media, Newsome fired back, calling Pickens a fake tough guy. This was a clear shot at the Steelers' wide receiver, who had already made headlines earlier in the game for his physical altercation with Newsome. It seems that bad blood between the two players is only growing, setting up a potential explosive rematch when these two teams meet again later this season. This is far from the first time that Pickens has let his emotions get the best of him on the field. Over his first few seasons with the Steelers, he has had a few run-ins with a pattern of emotional outbursts. Pickens' antics on the field are starting to become a theme, and it's raising questions about his maturity and whether or not he's mentally ready to handle the pressure of playing in big games. The Steelers have certainly put up with a lot because of his raw talent. He's their best receiver, and his ability to make big plays has kept him on the field despite his emotional outbursts. But there's a point where those outbursts can become a distraction for the team, and Pickens has to realize that his actions have consequences, not only for himself but for his teammates as well. The Steelers' coaching staff isn't going to be thrilled. Action be on the way, given that Pickens already received a fine for unsportsmanlike conduct earlier in the season. There's a chance the NFL could take another look at his behavior after Thursday night's game. Though no penalties were enforced during the game, the league could still take action behind the scenes, issuing a fine or potentially a suspension for his post-game antics and altercation with Newsome. Pickens' fiery nature makes him a strong competitor, but the Steelers are going to have to help him find a way to channel that intensity into more positive play on the field, rather than letting it lead to fights and distractions. If Pickens continues to act out in these emotional ways, the Steelers may find themselves facing more fines, penalties, and questions from the media, which is the last thing they want in the middle of a playoff push. What's next for Pickens and the Steelers? As the Steelers continue to push through the rest of the season, they will need to keep a close eye on Pickens' behavior and his ability to maintain control when emotions run high. At 8-3, they're in a strong position to make a playoff run, but any distractions, especially from their best receiver, could derail their momentum. The last thing they need is for Pickens to let his frustrations boil over again and affect the team's performance. Pickens himself will have to do some soul-searching and figure out how to avoid letting his anger cloud his judgment. If he can find a way to balance his passion for the game with a more disciplined approach, he could take his game, and his team, to even greater heights. The next time the Steelers and Browns meet in Week 14, fans can expect the tension between Pickens and Newsome to still be palpable. This rivalry is far from over, and with these two players at the center of it, there's no telling what will happen next. One thing is for sure, the drama isn't over yet. Tense. It turned the field into a blizzard that looked like something out of a winter sports movie. It was Thursday night. The Cleveland Browns were playing at home, and let's just say, Things were getting icy, and not just because of the weather. The Browns, sitting at a 2-8 record, were up against their AFC North rivals, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, no one expected a lot from Cleveland in this game. But boy, did they give their fans something to remember. In the most dramatic fashion, the Browns went ahead with a game-winning touchdown drive in the fourth quarter, clinching a stunning 24-9. He punched in the go-ahead touchdown with just 57 seconds remaining. The stadium erupted in cheers, with Browns fans, who had endured a tough season and endured the frigid conditions, celebrating as if they had won the Super Bowl. The Steelers looked flat in the first half. So, how did we get to this glorious moment for Cleveland? Well, let's just say the Pittsburgh Steelers didn't look like themselves early on. Coming off a huge win against the Baltimore Ravens, it was almost as if the Steelers were suffering from a bit of a post-victory hangover. The offense, usually humming along, managed to score only 3 points in the first half. Even their normally reliable kicker, Chris Boswell, had an off night, missing a kick wide right. And as if that wasn't enough, Pittsburgh's offensive line had no answer for Browns' defense. Halftime. By the break, Cleveland was leading 10-3. Now, Cleveland's defense hasn't exactly been stellar this season. But man, they turned it up when it mattered most. Garrett's ferocity was a huge part of that. But the Browns' defensive unit as a whole dominated the trenches. In the third quarter, the Steelers faced a crucial 4th and 1, and Jaylen Warren was stuffed for a 1-yard loss. A few plays earlier, the Steelers had even inserted backup QB Justin Fields to run a 4th down play, and he too was stopped cold by the Browns, losing 2 yards in near whiteout conditions, with snowflakes swirling around like confetti in the wind. But this is where the Browns really started to find their rhythm. Early in the fourth quarter, Cleveland pushed the envelope on offense. With a big 4th and goal play, Winston scrambled into the end zone for a touchdown, then added a successful 2-point conversion, giving the Browns an 18-6 lead. At that moment, you'd think they had the game locked up, but as always, Pittsburgh wasn't ready to just roll over. Steelers rally in the fourth quarter. If you know anything about the Steelers, you know they're not the type to back down easily. As the snowflakes continued to blanket the field, Pittsburgh's offense managed to find some life. Enter Justin Fields, who connected on a huge 30-yard run down the sideline, the Steelers' first big play in quite some time. That got the Steelers' sideline buzzing. And after a couple of penalties by Cleveland, Pittsburgh managed to get on the scoreboard with a 3-yard touchdown from Warren. Now, the Steelers were only down 18-13. And suddenly, this game was far from over. Pittsburgh's defense, which has been one of their strong points all season, wasn't about to let Cleveland off the hook either. After a hit on Winston, Nick Herbig knocked the ball loose, and the Steelers recovered at the Browns' 27-yard line. Now, Pittsburgh had a golden opportunity to take the lead. They faced a 3rd and 6.